0 states that the powers and duties of the County Library Board shall have the authority and duty to contract with any library for the furnishing of library services to Wyandotte County and such powers and duties conferred by statute or otherwise prohibited. In addition, we've provided some pictures of some of our libraries. Here is the main library on 6th and Minnesota, and then the West Library on 1737 82nd Street. So continuing with the governance structure. So Kansas City, Kansas public library system operates within the boundaries of USD 500 school district and is governed by a 7-member board. Now that same 7-member board also governs the USD 500 school district. So KCKPL through the USD 500 school library board has its own mill rate for the operation of the libraries within the USD 500 boundaries.
So the library board in District 500 is the school board?
It is the same members.
Same people, like us with it's like the land bank?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Separate legal entities, but the same members. KCKPL also receives funding from the Wyandotte County Library District through an interlocal agreement which allows for the operation and maintenance of library services within the library county's district. And this agreement also allows for residents residing outside of USD 500 boundaries to utilize library services throughout the USD 500 area. So about the Wyandotte County Library District, we also kind of refer to it as the PET, and I'll show you here in a minute why. So the library district provides services to residents, as we said, outside of the USD 500 school district and outside the city of Bonner Springs Library District. So that area encompasses most of the city of Edwardsville, as well as the areas that are included within the Piper and Turner School District. The school districts of Piper and Turner are not necessarily involved in this governance, but I'm just referring to them geographically where they are. So the school district board consists of 11 members, and all of these members are appointed by the Unified Government Commissioners, all of you. So the library district board has the authority to set their own library district tax levy. And then, as I mentioned before, there are two systems. The second system is the city of Bonner Springs Library District. And that district operates within the city of Bonner Springs. And while they do have a library board, for the most part, their services are governed by the City Council of Bonner Springs. And Bonner Springs levies its own mill rate for their library services, but they also receive some funds from the county library district board to cover costs of patrons that go to their libraries who don't live in Bonner Springs. And we'll talk more about how much that is later on in the presentation. So now we're providing here a map, and just to show you how all these three kind of districts look. So the green is the USD 500 School District Library Board, and the yellow is what we're calling the PET District, which is the district governed by the Wyandotte County Library Board. And those are those areas of Piper, Edwardsville, and Turner, so PET, right? And then lastly in blue is Bonner Springs. And we've also provided here little building flags to show where the different libraries are located. So you can see most of the libraries are located within USD, but there is one, the Turner Community Center, which is in the PET district. And then Bonner Springs has their library.
What about the Schlegel Library and the environmental, what district is? Looks like that's in the PET district also, is that true?
Yeah, it's in the USD 500. It's just right on the border.
Oh, it's just where they place it on this map. Okay.
Sorry.
No problem.
So here's some legal framework, and I'm going to go over there, but I'll go over this but I'm happy to also pass this on to legal if they want to chime in. Okay. All right, so resolution number 678, adopted back in September of 1964, directed an election to determine whether a free public library in Wyandotte County should be established. And the election was held in November, a few months later, and it passed by 7,300 to 3,200 votes. So, and then about a year later, resolution number 630, adopted in 1965, established the library and set the mill levy and appointed the original board. So CR 91-1 placed a hard cap of 6 mills on the library board's taxing authority. That was passed back in 1991. Recodification of our UG ordinance and resolution 0-09, adopted back in 2009, repealed this hard 6 mil cap, effectively granting the broad taxing authority to the library board that they currently have. So state statute has established this kind of special library governance that we have, and it basically Kansas statute 12-1220. If a majority of the votes cast at such election on such proposition shall be in the affirmative, the governing body shall forthwith establish such library and is hereby authorized to and shall annually levy a tax for the maintenance of such libraries in such sum as the library board shall determine within the limitations fixed by law. So such tax shall be levied and collected in a like manner as other taxes of the municipality and shall be kept in a separate fund as known as the library fund of such municipality. So that's the law we're working under. And then finally, we wanted to share with you that there was an Attorney General's opinion handed down in 2006 that stated that the Board of County Commissioners is authorized to establish a county library, but it is a library board, not the board of the county commissioners, and that establishes the amount of the tax levy needed to maintain the library. So the only limitation on the library board is that the tax be within the limitations fixed by law. So at this point, we wanted to kind of demonstrate to you that our library structure in Wyandotte County is one of the largest in the state. So here we've listed 6 or 7 of the larger municipalities in Kansas, and you can see that Wyandotte County is the largest. The first is Wyandotte County Library. These are population figures, roughly population figures provided by the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library System. And Johnson County's library's got 430,000 residents that are served by their library system. Wichita's second at 360,000. Topeka and Shawnee Public Library has 178, and Wyandotte County in total has 157. So as I mentioned, there's kind of 3 components to the library systems that work collaboratively together in Wyandotte County. The first one is this Kansas City, Kansas Public Library System. They serve 115,000, I'm not able to read this very well, 115,200 residents located within the USD 500 borders. Then there's the Pet District, which is that Piper, Edwardsville, Turner area that is governed by the County Library Board. We contract with KCKPL to provide services outside the KCKPL service area, and approximately 33,400 residents are served by the Pet District. And then finally, the Bonner Springs library system serves about 6% of the total population, and they serve their own residents, but as I mentioned, they also receive some funding from the from the Wyandotte County Library District. So wanted to talk a little bit more about how the Pet District partners with the KCKPL. We're going to pass that on to one of you good fellows.
Thank you. The value of being part of a larger system provides the user, the primary service provider for the PET district is the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library. Our mobile library, the Wyandotte County Board contributes to the operation of a mobile library service in the PET district through KCKPL. While the district could make the expenses of the materials and staff work, a smaller independent district would not be able to handle the support structure. For example, having to send the people for CDL training, ongoing maintenance, fuel costs, etc. It would likely have to eliminate this service. Our e-resources, currently the Turner Library patron has access to a broader array of digital resources than a typical small library like Bonner Springs would enjoy. Among those are access to robust databases such as RefUSA, a product that is heavily used by small business, and Tumble Books, a resource of ebooks for children 0 to 6th grade. Furthermore, the scale of access is markedly different. We have a program database called Hoopla, a very popular content provider, is accessible by both Bonner Springs and KCKPL library patrons. KCKPL patrons get 15 checkouts from this collection a month. Bonner Springs patron, and Bonner Springs director can verify, get between 3 to 5 checkouts. Then we have the double your budget. It was different. Currently, the Turner Library budget does not require custodial, administrative, or human resource costs. Bonner Springs currently employs about 11 people. Turner has 6 people. Bonner is only about 60 to 70% the actual size of Turner. Libraries of this size typically have benefits, so there would be a large transition at that point as well. Next one, interlibrary loan. Kansas City, Kansas Public Library patrons participate in a more robust ILL, and that's interlibrary loan program, giving patrons access to materials from around the world. While typically smaller libraries have interlibrary loan capacity, the system and thus the collections they have access are much smaller. IT. Our IT services, Turner would have to set aside money for its IT needs. While it currently pays for any hardware used in the building, the expertise and the management of that infrastructure would be an interesting question and potentially large expense going forward. Our web presence. Where's the web? Is it IT? ILS? Yeah. That's the Integrated Library System, ILS. This is the business side of how the library manages its collections. A separate library in Turner would require a move to a new ILS or bear the full cost of using the current one, and the one that we use is Cersei Dynex. Typically, small libraries in Kansas use the COA system, as Bonner Library does. It is a good system, but less robust than the one Kansas Public Library uses. Furthermore, a switch to COA means the primary collections shared for Turner residents are those of the small libraries in Northeast Kansas, those who also run COA. It would substantially change how materials would be moved from South Library to Turner Library. Turner residents would need 2 cars to access both libraries and could no longer place holds to be brought to Turner from Kansas to Kansas Public Libraries. It would have to be an ILL process.
So on your interloan process, which is it just the libraries, the main libraries that can loan out to each other, or can the school libraries loan from the big libraries?
Sure.
Sorry.
The short answer is it depends. Most school libraries don't participate in a robust interlibrary loan program simply because the size of the collections and the timeliness of their need means that they're not really going to be sharing things. In both the COA system and any of the more robust systems, primary and secondary schools might participate, but for the most part, they're not part of an interlibrary loan. The types of systems that we would talk about in interlibrary loan would be if you're a librarian in the state of Kansas, you have a couple of choices. One is a really Kansas-based system, and that's what most of the smaller libraries go for. And by smaller, I mean, we're talking about populations that can be under 5,000. For larger libraries that might have needs to bring in, say, more robust research things, the farthest away we participate in large organizations such as the Mid-America Library Association and some other types of interlibrary loan agreements that allow your reach to be very, very far. The farthest item I've known that we brought to Wyandotte County for one of our folks is from Japan. And we regularly bring stuff across the border from Missouri. To kind of give you an example, in current interlibrary loan, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds and wonkiness of it, but Kansas and Missouri don't really have a good way of sharing materials right now. They don't. And so the most effective way is through being part of an organization, Mid-America Library Association. And that's a fee-based system. And a lot of times, particularly smaller libraries, are going to have to make a choice between whether or not they want to spend that extra money to have that ILL capacity or not.
But we do now.
Big libraries do, typically.
Okay, I was just wondering, because I have had several people who, who have kids in school, and they're like, oh, we can't get this book, we'll have to go down to the big library. I said, we can't get it through the school library, so I just wanted that cleared. Thank you.
I got a question. Maybe I'll save it till the end. Go ahead with the presentation.
All right.
So the library, the county library pet district, it's governed by a board, and the board chair is appointed by the mayor of unified government, and the remaining board district members are appointed by the respective UG commissioners in the different districts, in the different UG districts. So the board has, as I mentioned, has the authority to set the county library tax, and with that money, they can either establish or operate a library, or they can contract with another library system to provide services to residents of the pet district. So that latter one is what we have here. Well, we actually have a mix of both of those bullet points. So the board, the two library systems, and the UG commissioners entered into an interlocal agreement back in 2003, and it continues until it's modified or terminated. So the next few slides are going to show you some examples of how population and library patron circulation are distributed throughout the library district. So for the most part, the pest district could form their own libraries, as we mentioned, take on extra expense and responsibility while still having access to the Kansas City, Kansas public library system due to the reciprocal agreements. But considering the current circulation data, the pet district library patrons, doing so would seem a little inefficient since the patrons are well served under the current legal structure. And so the first graph shows the distribution by population or by resident. The green throughout this PowerPoint, green represents the Kansas City, Kansas public library system. Yellow represents PET, and then the Bonner Springs system is in blue. And so if you're looking just at population, KCK Public Library System has 73% of the population, PET has 21, and Bonner Springs has 6. If you're looking at patron circulation, you'll see that over the last 3 years, you got 15, 16, and 17. You can see that the number of the circulation in general represents 82% of the total circulation at the KCK Public Library, 17 in 2017, 17% for the district or for the pet district, and then 1% for Bonner Springs. And what that tells us is that that residents in the pet and Bonner Springs are utilizing services in the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library system. So.
That just means that you checked out an item at the library. So that's Yeah, that's a single item being checked out. And just for clarification for the commissioners here, this represents Kansas City, Kansas circulation. I don't want, Jack and his team do a great job at Bonner Springs, and I don't want you to think that they're only circling 6,000 items a year. He does a really great job. This is just reflective of Kansas City, Kansas Public Library circulation in the Bonner Springs district. I didn't want, they do a lot more than that.
So just to clarify that means Bonner Springs residents who got something from a KCK library.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, thank you. So this is the same information. It says it's distributed based on zip code. So as you can see here, so zip code is throughout, these are all the zip codes throughout the Wyandotte County. The three zip codes that, although they don't exactly correspond to the library district boundaries, the three main zip codes that are within the pet district are the ones that have a little asterisk on them. So it's 66106, 66109, and then 66111. There towards the right. So what we have here, the blue is population and orange is circulation. And you can see that how amongst that they vary based on zip code, but specifically 66106, you can see that population's 15%, while the circulation is 16%. It's 1 percentage higher. In 66109, it's a whole 5 percentage points difference, and in 66111, you know, they're pretty much even money. And then the very same information is shown geographically here. So you can see the yellow text boxes are those of the pet district for the most part, generally. And then you have Bonner Springs, and then you have the green, which are the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library System. Any questions on that? Probably later, after we digest it.
The librarians answering questions, we do.
So generally, the taxing authority of the public libraries in Wyandotte County, there are 3 mill levies set by 3 respective districts. There's the USD 500 School Board, which acting as the library board, Wyandotte County Library Board, and then Bonner Springs. And so the second level here is just showing which residents are pay those taxes. So the residents of those respective districts are the ones that pay those taxes. And the services provided, so under the USD 500 School Board acting as the library board, those services are provided by the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library, the Wyandotte County Library Board provides services to both residents of Kansas City, Kansas Public Library, Bonner Springs, and library services within our own district. And that's through the interlocal agreement. And then Bonner Springs has their own city library. So pursuant to the interlocal agreement and state statute, basically the mill rates are collected by the UG Director of Revenue or Treasury, which reports to me, and we're recruiting for a new one. So if anyone is interested, please apply, because the deadline is in a few weeks. She or he collects the taxes and produced by the library district levy and deposits the taxes in a separate library district fund. And I just want to note here's a picture of the Turner Community Library here on the top, and then we have our mobile library here underneath. So, so the interlocal agreement states that the treasurer is going to distribute the collected funds into our own county fund according to the allocation formula contained in the current budget approved by the Wyandotte County Library Board. And I'm going to show that a little bit more detail on that later. And it isn't just property taxes. We also levy on behalf of the library district personal property and tangible taxes, motor vehicle taxes, and then some payment in lieu taxes for industrial revenue bonds. So But the main one is the real estate taxes. So the next two slides are going to show a little bit of the property tax funding mix. So this slide, it shows you the data. The next one is kind of more of a data visualization so that you can see the differences. So the top lines, we got the three districts. The top line is the different assessed values. So, and then followed by the mill rate. So the Pet District's mill rate is 6.059, and the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library System is 10.985. But I did want to note that that seems like a lot, but you must keep in mind also that they encompass a smaller amount of the total boundaries of the county than what you're used to talking about as the UG commissioners. So the assessed value for the library district is $432 million, and the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library System is $707 million. The entire county is around $1.2 billion, so just keep that in mind. So it generates a little bit less revenue than most, than what you're used to seeing in terms of the whole county. And then, of course, the city of Bonner Springs, their assessed value is $69 million with a mill rate of 5. And that results in property tax revenue on the third line. So the Pet District Library Board generates roughly $2.6 million, or that's what we are planning for 2018. The library district governed by the USD 500 generates $7.7 million, and the Bonner Springs Library property tax mill rate generates an estimated $358 million. So if you had a home that was worth $100,000, your tax bill on an annual basis for the Pet District is roughly $70 a year. For the library district within the 500 school district, it's $126 a year, and for Bonner Springs, it's roughly $60 a year.
Didn't you mean in Bonner it's 350,000?
Oh, okay. 350,000. Did I say?
Million.
I meant 358,000. So just so that you can kind of get a visual of how all of this data looks, the same 4 data points are represented in these 4 boxes. So you can see AV. The yellow, again, is PET. The green is USD 500, and Bonner Springs is blue. So for the most part, USD 500 assessed value of $707 million is 63% greater than the Pet District assessed value, all right? Whereas on the mill rate, the 500 USD 500 mill levy is 10.985, and that's 81% greater than the Pet District mill rate. The property tax, USD 500's library property tax revenue is 3 times that of the Pet District property tax collection, and because it's larger assessed value and a higher mill rate. And so, but the annual bill, you can see that USD 500 taxpayers pay nearly twice what the Pet taxpayers pay for library services funded by the property tax. All right, so the last slide gives us kind of an update on the County Library Board's 2018 budget. So, and it's not just the library board, but all of it together. Kansas City. So, it's just the library board. Sorry, the total library board budget for 2018 is $2.7 million, and of that total amount, because of the interlocal agreement, 2.2 million of it is given to Kansas City, Kansas Public Library in order to pay for those services that they provide, with the stipulation that $74,000 of salaries and benefits are capped for the Schlegel Library employees, paid for by KCKPL through an allocation. There's also a small 7% piece of $192,000 that's provided to the City of Bonner Springs Library System for its operations. And then Turner Community Library is given $379,000 for the operations of the Turner Community Library. So below, it gives you a little bit of a history over the past 3 years. The library budget has remained relatively flat. With they've consistently, increased their budget by a conservative 5% over the last few years. This past year, it was up $134,000. So that's all we have. We're happy to answer any questions.
Well, I do want to give Patty, if there's something you'd like to say in terms of the chair of the board, to give you that opportunity. If there's anything any of the other library folks would like to address to the board, I know we have some questions, or if you'd just like to stand for questions if we have them. But if you'd like to say something, I'd invite you to do so.
The only thing I might add to that presentation is that I'm sure you're all aware that when you look at that funding source, that the funding that goes towards the 14% that goes for the Turner Library is the total funding for the Turner Library. There's no other sources of funds that come for that. And the Turner Library was set up with an interlocal agreement among Kansas City, Kansas, and the Turner School Board and the library system, and who else? And the UG, for that to occur.
All right, Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. Part of the reason I think why we have the presentation tonight is because when we were in budget sessions preparing for our budget, we had heard a similar presentation about the libraries, and we had some questions, and I know that one of the questions that came up was a library for Piper, and another question that came up was Commissioner Walters was inquiring about Edwardsville, and then we also had a question about the governance piece. So I feel like you've gone over quite a bit of that, but I kind of wanted to go back and look at these population and circulation numbers, if we could, because if you take away Slagle Library, which isn't really a place where you go check out books.
It is.
It is, okay. I go
Not
there
in
for the
comparison.
Eagle Show.
Yeah.
So, so you can check out books at Slagle?
Yes, you can. Environmental books.
That's great.
Yeah.
What would be the
All kinds of
percentage?
books?
Because they participate as a library, so we have some families who live out there who get their holds. And so we can deliver any number of books. We have a couple of power users out there
Okay.
who might, they're a family, so they might be homeschoolers. So some of those are what we would call power users, so we can deliver. The collection there is very small. It's going to be, it's not it's less than 1% of our total circ of what we deliver through that channel.
That's less.
But if you were a patron who lived at the lake and you wanted to get your library materials there, that is absolutely an option for you.
Well, it's good to know that.
There you go. A beautiful place to pick up books.
It is beautiful there, by the way. What I'm driving at, I think, is a conversation around locations of physical libraries. And, we've heard it brought up more than once about a possibility of a library for Piper. And while I wouldn't necessarily be against that, I think your data is showing me that Piper is very well served by the current libraries, and that the folks in Piper have circulation as deep or deeper than any other place in this county. Am I reading that right?
You are.
Okay, and if we were going to look at locations where, if we determined we did need a new physical library to be built somewhere, we'd want to do some deeper analysis than just say, Piper doesn't have a library, therefore we should stick a library in Piper. I just want to kind of have an honest conversation about that, because I don't think that's what your data is telling us. So I just want to throw that out there, and Commissioner Kane's not here, so, but I know he has brought that up more than one time. And then Commissioner Walters, I just can't remember, frankly, you had a question about Edwardsville, and I just really can't remember, frankly, what you were saying.
Can you please turn your microphone on?
I just really wanted to understand, because Edwardsville and Bonner Springs are in the same school district, I think a lot of the Edwardsville residents use the Bonner Springs Library, and it just surprised me that they're covered in two different systems is all. And commenting on your point about Piper, if you wanted to put libraries where the most use is, seems like Piper would be a very logical location for a library. If they're using library resources sort of disproportionately compared to other members of the community, it seems like that would be a very logical place to consider putting one. Yeah, I heard you, Kathleen, say that that these statistics sort of prove that the PET areas were well served by the existing libraries, and I didn't quite understand the logical conclusion of that. What is it about this that proves or that indicates to you that the PET districts are well served?
Well, the reason I said that is because the PET residents are paying 70, and those that work in the that reside in Kansas City, Kansas Public Library System District pay quite a bit more per year. So, and yet those that live in the PET district are able to use library services all over the county, including Kansas City, Kansas Public Library. That's why. So it's cost effective.
Oh, so it's cost effective.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner?
But I'm happy to, if you could expand upon that, that'd be great.
David has the stats, and he can explain. Sure.
So the two things to remember when you look at population versus circulation, and particularly in the Edwardsville case, that's one of the reasons why that 7% of that budget is given to Bonner Springs, because there is an expectation that a lot of those Edwardsville folks are going to use of those resources. And the mobile, the mobile services that we have, to be honest, of that number that you see there, about 65% of all the circulation that we do in Edwardsville comes out of our mobile services. And that's something that's only been about a year old. So I don't know if that number will go up or down. When you look at this, when we break it down, certainly by zip code, you can see zip codes and a rough understanding that the participation is roughly bang on in terms of what you're looking at. When we try to break it down a little bit more by school districts, it's a little finer. We're pretty confident in that data as well. So when we look at it, the Piper School District is about 9% of the entire population of the county. It takes about 9% of the circulation. So again, it's about where you'd imagine it. For Edwardsville, you can see it's about 6 and 5, so it's about one off. The one when you look at the Turner School District, it's about 12% of the total population, roughly. As we look at the numbers, it's about 9% of the circulation. The thing about Turner is part of that 3%. So if you think about it from a library perspective, it's kind of hard to be bang on, like you're going to be right on. So you're literally looking for a variance of about 1 to 2%. So Turner is, so it's 3%. So it's pretty close. But Turner residents are also going to be using Bonner Springs in terms of their circulation. So I think the idea that the residents are served and well served, they're served at about the rate of their population. What Turner? Oh, Argentine. But they're going to use the Argentine, but they're also on the west side. So depending on where they might go, you'll be surprised how people travel, because a lot of it determines where you work. There are a lot of people who would travel, and I may, for instance, live in Piper, but I work downtown, and so I will often use the main library, even though that's one of the places. So that's one of the things. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, but Turner also got a pretty long southern border. So some of their residents are closer to a library in a different district that's to our south.
Commissioner Walker?
I'm struck by and maybe I'm the only one, am I the only one that thinks that the way we do library services here, as a result, I think of perhaps historical or other reasons, is inefficient? I mean, if you were going to build a library system for Wyandotte County, this would not be what any study group would ever come up and recommend. The disparity in cost, I'm a beneficiary of that. I live in the Pet District. The locations of most of the libraries, now again, I'm complaining, but I'm 7 minutes from the Argentine Library. And the new library is heads and shoulders above the other library. It seems like to me when the people in 1997 or 98 voted for consolidation, the idea got that all we were going to do is consolidate the government, and it ended there. And we've done internally some consolidation of departments and agencies, but some of the services that would benefit, it just seems like it's very inefficient the way we do this. And maybe I'm saying this because I'm going out the doors and nobody's ever gonna, get mad at me and vote me out of office for it, but it really strikes me that there's a better way to do library services than have it run principally, it seems, by or located in one of the 4 school districts, and then these interlocal patchwork agreements that, yeah, you can get the services, but I don't know why Harold Johnson or Brian McKernan's paying $60 more a year for the same service.
I don't know either. I don't know.
Oh, and Jane, than Melissa and I pay. I mean, clearly that is not a good result. And if I were going to create it, it would be a Wyandotte County governmental function. And underneath it, you could either create a board or I suppose it probably wouldn't be good for the commissioners, but it's too big a job to add to this at the outrageous pay that they give us for what we do. But still, do any of you think this is inefficient? Are you making the best of a bad situation? I mean, I know we got a library in Turner, but come on, it's not a great library, Pat.
Well, I wouldn't agree with that, but that's all from everybody's different viewpoint. However, but we're in a system that was not created by any of you or any of us. If you look at the historically, I think it was 1939, somewhere in that range, when the Kansas School District set up libraries because there were no libraries. So they now, in essence, own all of their buildings. And Commissioner Walker, you would know better than anybody else up there, but there was a conversation at one time about this very subject. And as you get into the subject, it becomes a really murky, muddy mess. And I suspect if the unified government wanted to go down that path, you could set up a task force to address that. There is a cost involved. I mean, and I'm not on the, I don't live in Kansas City, Kansas School District, but there would be a cost involved if you start putting all buildings, saying that somehow now they're part of this system. Somebody has to acquire them and own them, and they don't just get handed over. So I think that's where the rubber meets the road in kind of going down that path of saying, hey, there's 3. It's kind of like maybe you might compare it to saying, should there just be one school district in Wyandotte County? I mean, I don't think you want to go down that path. And if you do, good luck. but I just know from my experience and from looking at the historical perspective of it, that you have we are, if we go beyond that, we are providing good library service throughout the county, and your library board is contracting to provide those services, and both Bonner and Kansas City, Kansas continue to keep upping what's available. And yes, no, we're not all paying the same amount for those services. And the library board, I will tell you, is try to move a little bit towards that path, but again, it is a tax. And so if you make a large leap to say the pet district is going to be the same as Kansas City, Kansas, then everyone who represents the pet district be prepared. Your constituents will notice because it fits in one category on their tax bill. It's an issue that you would have to, I mean, that I would say that the commission would want to say they want to sell to bring that up.
Well, I don't disagree that they're difficult, and I did indicate it results from historical anomalies that, you know, when Kansas City, Kansas was a sliver on the eastern end of the county and the rest of it was unincorporated. You know, they created a library. I don't lose sight of the fact that the school district, in a legal sense, owns the libraries, but it's the people that live here that pay for them. The books belong to the people, the buildings belong to the people, same way they did with the county and the city. And if we can consolidate a city and county government, consolidating the various libraries can't be as difficult. It really can't. It's just something that nobody wants to perhaps take on because it's working, the car's working, so why get a new one? But eventually somebody's going to say, why am I paying $130 a year for library services when people out in Turner are paying $60, or people in Bonner are paying $60? And it's not going to be my problem, but it just strikes me as inequitable, and if it's inequitable, it's probably not right.
Commissioner Philbrook.
All right, I'm going to step into it with him, and I am here for a little while longer. I don't know how much longer after I say this, but I do agree with a lot of what you said, you know, but I don't know if this is the right time to step in the middle of that muck. I do believe that, yes, this needs to be looked at and possibly brought into the 21st century, but whether it's time right now to do it, I don't know. And it's going to have to take a lot of people out there talking to us to tell us if they want us to do this or not, because I'm not going to just jump in there and say, yes, this is the next thing I want to jump into the middle to, because we have a lot of other things to deal with. And it is working for us, but is it equitable? No. Very few things are, I would have to say. But I just wanted to put my 2 cents worth in there and invite the public to put their several cents in there and let us know what they really want us to do. Thank you.
All right, we do have another presentation this evening, so I'd like to wrap this one up. I want to thank the library folks for working on this, for Kathleen for your work on this. It is such a complicated structure. I think it was worth presenting to the commission and then to the public. This is a presentation we can point back to when constituents ask, how does the library system work? It is complicated, and it's as complicated as any system I'm aware of. So anyway, thank you all very much for your presentation and for your hard work making sure we have library services in Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a couple minutes for transition, and then we'll begin our SOAR presentation. turn it over to Melissa Sieben for a presentation.
All right, Mayor, I recognized who I was, so that was a good start. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Commission. We are excited to be here with our third quarter report, just a little month delayed. We've been a very busy commission the last few months with our special sessions, so we gracefully waited to come in and talk to you. We are going to try to move this through pretty quickly so you have a little bit of time in between and Edwin has time to set up. So just as a reminder, what is SOAR's goal is improving the quality of life in Wyandotte County. And the work of our SOAR group is to work on appearance, safety, and communications. And this is all based out of the feedback that we received through our resident survey. And that is where we are starting from every day when we work on these very difficult issues. And with that, we always have in mind when we're trying to achieve outcomes. So here's our updates. So back in January, we presented this metrics to you for the first time, this flow chart. And we do have some numbers to present to you for the first time tonight on our progress for 2017. As you can see, we've been working to resolve unfit structures, and we have brought that number down by almost 200 through our work. Now, there's a variety of reasons all that happened we can explain to you, but it is one of our goals to have fewer unfit structures in the community. The other is we've actually increased the number of properties in our land bank, and most of you know that we've been changing how we handle our tax sale and not leaving properties in purgatory, meaning in between tax sale and nowhere. And so we actually have increased our number of holdings, including structures. We'll talk a little more about that later. We'll also talk about our vacant housing stock and how we're working to get a hold of better data to be able to provide accurate numbers on sort of where we stand with that moving forward. Our demolition number actually has gone up, not down, which is great because we know going forward there's more money due to the budget that you approved this summer to address demolitions that are necessary in the community. One of our biggest wins so far this year has been the reduction in the number of tax sale eligible parcels, which has been a result of transitioning from a 2 tax sale a year system and up to a 3 tax year earlier system. So these aren't even final numbers for 17, so we should see better progress there. And then our property maintenance index, we'll be updating that at the end of the year. So what you'll see here is also our safety slide, which most of this actually is going to be updated after the spring of 18 when we do our resident satisfaction survey, which is also again funded in the 2018 budget.
That's a psychological ploy if I ever saw one.
I know. Hey,
You guys are just way too creative.
got some creative staff here. That was not me, just want to defer that to the other folks here. So what I do want to note is that we have spent the bulk of the last month and a half transitioning into a software to manage those 193 different action items that we were discussing. And in doing so, this is our first presentation tonight in which staff has had to use the new system. And we are actually compiling data from the beginning of the year in the system. We've given you an executive report. If you want to read ad nauseum about our successes, you can get into that. And I know there's a few people, Commissioner McCarron, that might actually read the whole thing. We've given it to you. It's quite long. In the future, these will actually just be monthly updates or quarterly updates. They won't encompass the year to date unless we want to do a year-end report.
To be very clear.
The PDF has actually been sent to the clerk and we'll be distributing it.
To be very clear, the words executive summary are the last time you'll hear about that thing in your hand tonight, unless you have questions. We are not going through that executive summary tonight. That is just the report that Invisio produces.
One of many reports, but we wanted you to.
Because one thing that really pisses me off is to get a report like this on the night that we're going to discuss it. So if we're going to discuss this at any time before I leave office, thank you for getting it to us tonight. But it seems hard to understand why we get this tonight and we're going to do this.
I wouldn't get too upset because we were just providing that as an extra to the
Seems
PowerPoint.
cultural in this organization to hand out stuff the night you get it or at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and expect commissioners to read it. And then when we're not prepared, we look like fools sitting up here.
There was no expectation that you would have read it. Actually, we were sharing it with you so that you could look at it later. So no expectation whatsoever. Sorry that you're offended. So what we've done here is we've actually are showing you what the software can do for us. And you will see that we have 13 different initiative areas for SOAR for 2017. And those you can see here are compiling 167 different action steps. And we are 64% on track through the year. So that means we have some challenges and some things that we aren't able to probably complete by the end of the year, which we are not shocked by that. We're actually happy to see that we're on track and only have about 27% of our items with some disruptions. And so as we move forward and we are able to publicly display this information through our web portal for you all, you'll see summaries like this out there and you'll be able to click and see what's going on by the individual items. So with that, I'm going to transition this over to different parts of our SOAR team. And first up is Greg Talkin, who's going to briefly highlight some accomplishments in the area of property maintenance.
Good evening. Good evening. We're just going to touch on a few of these accomplishments and challenges. I think the ones that have been more successful and we feel like are making a great impact are the new expedited trash and junk and debris complaints, as well as the expedited grass and weeds complaints. In the past, we did a two-step process, both involving 14 days, mainly because at that time we didn't have the resources behind us. We were trying to get everything cut by the owner, and so we took on that additional load of sending out 2 different notices and hoping we were referring less over to Parks and Rec or Public Works at that time to cut. With your guys' added resources in that area, we're only doing an abatement notice, and at the same time, in most instances, we're doing an administrative citation, and then if they don't take care of it in the first 14 days, we're sending it to Parks, it's being cut, we're billing them for that, and then we're also fining them with an administrative citation. So we feel like that's a great improvement. On some of the challenges, we still have to work on the strategic code enforcement with frontline staff as well as management. We're continuing to work through that. We think that a lot of what we do is based around that, but we need to make some improvements and learn more. And then we're still behind on publishing to the website our support work of property maintenance and SOAR initiatives. The web design was a little bit delayed, and then also with all the other initiatives that we're working on in SOAR, we haven't quite been able to get all of that information in.
All right, and our next up is vacant structures, and we're going to have Maddie Waldeck cover sort of where we're at on this. This is probably our single most challenging of the 13 initiatives.
Even though we've made some significant accomplishments like developing the vacant housing team, which we continue to meet and brainstorm about how we can combat the vacancy problem, we still have some major challenges. And one of those major challenges, like Melissa spoke about earlier, is the data. A lot of people define vacancy in different ways. Getting data from BPU and the United States Postal Service is sometimes very difficult. And so we have a hurdle in that in trying to establish the consistent data.
All right, Greg.
Okay, unfit structures and initiatives. Unfit structures and initiatives. We have developed a plan to remove commercial and rehabilitate and residential burnt structures. For those that are severely burnt, we have a new emergency demolition 72-hour notice that legals work with us on. And then we prioritize others depending on the circumstances and the severity of how bad they're damaged. Some of the challenges we're still dealing with is implementing a policy to allow for immediate boarding of vacant fire and damaged structures. That's twofold. Sometimes we don't want to board them quite that quick because we got to get our own investigation done. So we're trying to find that good mix on that issue. So
I just want to say something real quick. Thanks for getting that house boarded up on Orville. It was from fire, I saw.
Yeah, 5:30.
It didn't take you that long. So
that was one of them that got boarded up just about 2 hours before. I wish it was 2 hours later because I didn't get to see the inside.
Oops. More coordination.
Hey, delinquent taxes and tax sale initiatives. The next tax sale, mark your calendars, December 14th at Memorial Hall. And this year, we're really proud to have worked with Delinquent Revenue and Treasury to send letters to people that are in their first and second year of tax delinquency to prevent those people from being tax sale eligible. This is the first year that we've done this since, I believe, 2013, and we want to continue that initiative going forward. And like we talked about earlier, we want to prioritize vacant properties that are tax sale eligible in the tax sale process. But because we have data that we're still coming through, and sometimes we get it timely manner, and sometimes we don't get it in a timely manner, we're having difficulty prioritizing those vacant tax sale eligible parcels in the tax sale process.
Right, next is Tip.
Continuing our speed round. The land bank, the crown jewel of the land bank's accomplishments so far this year is the rehab program. Our biggest challenge is a continuing issue of getting automated updates where you can see the inventory live online in real time. But we are very close.
Commissioner Bynum?
I just have a quick question about that program. You have 14 or 15 contractors right now in the program? Just curious as to how one...
It's 35, actually.
Oh, you have 35.
It's growing all the time, which is great.
Okay, so that kind of helps answer my question in terms of if someone's interested in being a contractor in the program, they can do that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Actually, we encourage anyone that knows someone who's interested in being a rehabber for our land bank program to certainly get in contact with the land bank, which is in economic development.
The bar is pretty accessible. You need only be licensed and insured, and then finish the project.
All right, next up is our rental initiative.
All right. Most of our accomplishments in the rental side has been towards effort of communication and education, primarily of tenants, but landlords too. We've got a mailer that's in the process of going out that's going directly to tenants to make them aware that if they are having issues that they can call us when it's dealing with property maintenance issues and things along that line. Ever since state law changed, that's been kind of a barrier for us. So we're working a lot on communication there. On one of the challenges, we're still needing to engage other departments and divisions to support the rental licensing program, mainly through communication, education, and initiatives to assist with outreach.
I would like to see, and I've talked to legal about this, and I know we've talked about contract for deed forever. I would like to see some kind of ordinance change that encompasses contract for deed that makes them accountable to the rental codes and requires the seller to be accountable, because most of the contract for deeds from these predatory lenders, now there are some who do it for good, a lot of not-for-profits use contract for deed to help people get into homes, but there's a lot of predatory lending going out there, and if we could do a contract for deed piece and how we design that, I think you all would need to have input into. But if it looks like a rental and it talks like a rental and it sounds like a rental, it's a rental. And what they're doing is they're putting a balloon clause at the end of a 5-year period that the renters couldn't possibly meet, and then they just start over with a new contract for deed. But it puts the people who are living there on the hook for all the repairs because they're technically the owner, even though they don't have the resources, and they know they are not going to end up buying the house because they couldn't possibly meet the balloon clause criteria. And so they're not going, who's going to put new siding on a house they don't own or are not going to end up owning? No one. And so they can't do the kind of repairs we need. The person who's buying it cannot do the repairs they need because they know they're not going to have that house long term. And so if we could do something with the criteria we have for rental licensing on contract for deeds, then we could hold the deed holder accountable like we do a landlord. I think that would be a much better scenario.
Yeah, I want legal to clear something up for me. So on contract for deed, I thought that meant you don't, let's say I'm renting, money's going toward the contract for me to buy the house. But when I get ready to make my last payment, I make that payment and the deed is switched over to me. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's a way of basically a seller financing. But during that period of time, the seller retains the legal ownership of the property, and the buyer has what's called an equitable ownership. And when we adopted rental licensing in 98, I guess, 96, I don't know. But when we did that, we specifically made an exception for contract for deeds, but only if they filed the documents to establish it was what at that time we thought a bona fide contract for deed. They had to file either the contract or the affidavit of equitable interest to show that this other person had an interest in it.
And a bank's holding it, blah, blah, blah.
And so if you do that, that clouds the title, and you shouldn't just be able to kick them out. You have to basically go through a foreclosure process or quiet title action to get the property. And so we thought that would, at that time, that would take care of it and really protect the legitimate people who are using that method of conveying real estate.
Okay, well, I know we used to use it when I was growing up. My dad did contract for deed, but he was legitimate. So, yeah, I mean, I know there's ways to always take advantage of stuff. So I'm along with the mayor. If we can clean that up, I'm all for that.
I was just going to say, it may be that the cleaning up is that I don't think we enforce that. You can pull all of the residents, supposedly, a list of everybody who's in all of these houses, and if you see a name of the owner who doesn't match the name of the resident, you know it's either a rental or it's a contract for deed. If it's a contract for deed and there's nothing on file, they're clearly in violation. So I've had this discussion before, obviously. You can tell from the way I say it. Had this discussion before. All you have to do is match up those lists. If their name of the owner doesn't match the name of the resident, check for the rental license. If it's not there, check to see if there's a filing. If there's not, they're in violation. It's as simple as that.
Job for somebody, right?
Well, it would be.
I did it in Highland Crest in about 5 minutes. I could pull the list in Highland Crest and say, here's all the ones that aren't rental licensed where the owner doesn't match the resident.
Well, I'm just asking. That's why.
And actually, and Commissioner Markley's point is well taken. We also, when we're looking at vacants, there are some opportunities there. There are actually companies out there that actually specialize in tracking and management of that same type of thing where something on there doesn't match up with what's going on, and we internally don't have the ability to do the work, at least on the vacant side. It's possible that on this contract for deed / rental option that we're already running some of those to double check. The question is what the time intensity of it is and how often we would need to do it to have it be meaningful. So more to follow on that. Totally agree with you. On the vacant side, it's a whole different level of minutia of which we as UG staff, I don't think that it's probably good value for the taxpayers for us to be trying to chase that on a day-to-day basis.
But it might be that we only address the ones where there are problems. We don't need to know where all of them are. We just need to know where so if we get a problem property coming in,
yep,
and we could automate the process of checking that test to see what it is, then we could, because if it just seems like we would only want to test the ones that are a problem and not want to test everyone, because who cares if there's not a problem, right? So how to figure that out obviously is not easy.
Yeah, and what is considered equitable under the law in that as well. So, all right. So any other questions? Contract for deed. Understand the direction. All right. So on the community development initiatives, there's been a lot of work in this area as well. We did establish the NRSA, as well as we're awarded the lead-based paint grant. So we have a lot of huge accomplishments in this area. And also, not to go unnoticed as well, the Northeast Master Plan is underway, as well as the process to do the zoning code rewrites. So lots of heavy lifting here on the end of staff. And I think again, the biggest challenges is how do we keep that ability to publish that stuff out on our website so it's fresh. The next area is our infrastructure initiatives. We committed to integrating our Lucity software into our streets division, and that is well underway. And we've also worked on transitioning our records from paper to electronic files. Some of our challenges in this area is formalizing our sidewalk and trail infrastructure management, as well as our communications with residents about different ways to interact with us, including some of our GAP programs and sidewalk matching grant opportunities. That is going to continue to be an ongoing challenge, and we'll keep working on it. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Kristen Love, who is debuting before you probably for the very first time as a full commission, at least. Yes. And she has been our mowing czar.
Monarch of mowing.
Monarch of mowing, yes.
Congratulations.
Hey, thank you. Okay, so the biggest thing that we've done with mowing and landscaping is bringing everything into Parks and Rec. Before it was split up through a few different departments.
Move the microphone just a little closer to your face.
Sorry about that. Okay, and with transitioning it all into our department, we've been able to cut down the abatement times and the mowing rotation times. But the biggest challenge that we're facing is like a more visible map for anybody to go look at and see what was done to each property, and just formalizing our data collection.
Maps and telling our story are a recurring theme.
All right. And Logan is here to address our safety initiatives.
So the safety initiative, the police department adopted the DDAC zone, and that is increasing a presence in a designated area to combat crime, traffic, and blight. And they've also, the Planning and Zoning Commission just approved the purchase of land for a new fire station in the Piper area as well, which should improve fire response time. Challenges, again, the communications internally with departments related to efforts in safety and blight, and then to the website to share stories about safety and SOAR as well.
Right, and also our animal services initiative.
So we've implemented new animal service policies. We've also created and distributed bilingual communications about animal services, as well as information about reporting stray animals and pet ownership in the citizen newsletter. Challenges are implementing a plan to identify and track wild dogs, and still incentivizing pet owners to comply with regulations.
And the next one up that we have is our graffiti and vandalism initiative. And that is Logan as well.
Yeah, so they've been able to develop standard operating procedures to decrease response times for graffiti and formalize procedures to collect data and calculate costs, which has been great. Challenges are the cold weather abatements.
And our last initiative update is going to be in the area of data sharing, and then we will actually transition into sharing some of our wins overall in a more detailed fashion than you've seen to date. With that, I'm turning this over to Judd Knapp, wherever he is.
And since the biggest accomplishment in data sharing is hiring Judd into that job, he wasn't really sure how to say he was the biggest deal in data sharing, so I just cut him off. Now he'll have to pick a second one.
But we are very thankful to have someone to help us, because we spent the bulk of this year without anyone who was able to redo what we shared with you to create our blight index or our property maintenance index. And so now, without further ado, Judd Knapp.
Thank you. One of the accomplishments we had in the data sharing initiative is that we just as the departments are sharing data now, I went out and I grabbed the data from their department and I put it in an easily accessible area. And this updates nightly. The first two I've done is the land bank data and the unfit data. And the ones that I have in progress right now are demolitions, improvements, tax delinquent, tax sales, and vacants. And then the challenges we have is all the different systems we have in the city and making them talk together. That's very difficult to do. So, and then the open data wins is I finally get to show you how we count the 10,000 goal for the properties. The first one is the land bank, and I want to say the ones in yellow are the current wins as of today. And this is the land bank private sale is a land bank SOAR win. We have 93 currently. And the salmon color one on the bottom is a 5-year projection total of what that number will be in 5 years. The land bank structures by year is 58, and that's because we're taking properties in to the land bank now, and we're calling those opportunities. So that is a win for us. And the number at the bottom went up by 255, and that is a win because we are now taking structures in. So.
And that counts as a win again because we are now able to control the destiny of that structure, where when it was sitting in purgatory, somewhere perhaps between tax sale and whatever might never happen to it, it was sitting out there in limbo. So now we at least have the ability to control destiny.
All right, the next wins are unfit structures. The 104 count is unfit to fit. So those are houses that were unlivable and now people can live in them. And then 31 is unfit to demo. And then the 5-year projected total for this is 655. The number decreased by 188, so that's definitely a move in the right direction. The solar demolition, we have current wins of 44, and those are just structures that we've demoed this year. I would make note that of the budget at the bottom, the 18 budget is $2 million, so that's
Jed, we're gonna let
It's
Greg
just
talk.
in.
All right, it's just.
One quick note on the number of demos. We'll settle out this year with 62 demolitions with budget this year. And we will, out of that, I believe we had 5 commercial structures that were involved, included in those 62, so.
5 commercials.
We're not trying to put Erin out of a job. We like Erin. She's doing a great job.
Yeah, but I'd love to see her doing something else.
Yeah, I would hope that we would transition her skill set into something else that would be useful for the community, so. Go ahead, Judd.
That's all I got for this one.
Oh, yeah, so we're looking at 300 wins here, again, based on what we have today.
Tax delinquent, we have 927 current wins, and those are tax sale eligible to tax. In 5 years, we project that number to be, 4,600.
That is the net decrease in tax sale eligibles, and we've only had 2 of the 3 tax sales this year.
And you can see in the middle chart, the parcels filed by year. That is an increase of 1,000 for this year, and they are now doing 3 tax sales. So that, and they're doing an average of 712 parcels per tax sale. So they've added a tax sale, and they're also increasing the number per tax sale. And you see the 1,000 and the parcel filed by year is a 1,000 decrease in the tax sale eligible by year in the bottom. So there's definitely a correlation between the two.
Any questions? Okay. All right. So the last set of slides, actually, well, what we've done is we've tried to calculate sort of where we think we'll be in meeting our 10,000, which there's no total slide here. We don't hit 10,000 if we stay at this trajectory, and I think that's the critical thing for the commission to understand is the numbers we're showing you today are telling our team that we have to double down, we have to work harder, or well, smarter, not harder, we have to work smarter to be able to move beyond some of the hurdles that we've encountered, some of the challenges that have been put before us, and we have to figure out how to partner differently to be able to make more successes. So we've been out on a circuit trying to share this with departments. We've been trying to share this with neighborhood and community groups, and happy to talk to anyone that's interested and present before them as well. So we have a lot of internal work to continue to do, but we also need partners in the community. One of the things I did hand out that should be sitting in front of you is a little half sheet of paper that on one side is in English, the other's in Spanish. We actually used that in the Day of the Dead parade here on Central Avenue a few weeks ago, and we're going to be using it again this weekend at the KU Medical Center. Help me, Neighborhood Social. So we're trying to get out in different ways and spread our word about how you can be a property champion in Kansas City, Kansas. So without, I'll turn over to Tib just to kind of, Maddie, to wrap up on a few just brief high notes.
So at our last update, we talked about how SOAR and NRC were going to work together to move towards a resolutions-based code system. And we are there, and we've been working alongside with the wonderful people of the Code Enforcement Division, shadowing their operations. We've started process mapping, developing a standard operating procedure, and really getting their input on what would make their job easier, because they're the ones that are on the boots on the ground, and they're the ones that are doing the work every day, and they have a really a lot of great ideas. And we're also doing some morale boosting initiatives. And as you can see in the picture, that's when we celebrated their 400% increase in abatements. We came out, put up balloons everywhere, and brought candy and spent the day with them. It was really great.
What I think is critical about the 400% is NRC generated those, but parks responded. And though it wasn't always, you know, seamless and easy, we made it through the season. And though we may have gotten a little behind mid-season when it didn't dry up like we were really hoping it would, and when we were hit by several rounds of storms that pulled staff into doing other things, we kept on it and we didn't give up. And I want to really attribute both sides of the aisle to that, because if with one without the other wouldn't have worked, and they both kept going. And so it was really good work, and we were going to be doing some downloads from the end of the mowing season to really get a better understanding of what worked well, what didn't work well, what could we do differently if we owned this versus that, if we tweak this just a little bit, how is it going to be better for next year? So the goal is to get better next year and to improve off of what we learned from this year. And I think for Greg's staff, it's to know that when they actually are writing that ticket or sending that notice, it means something, because repeatedly I heard from staff over the course of this year is, well, when we used to do it, it was just a waste of time because we weren't getting to it. We weren't geared up. We weren't set to handle that. We weren't able to make the follow through. You know, it's like, you know, making idle threats. Well, it was a disincentive to them to even bother taking the time to waste the piece of paper. Well, we've now made it so that it's a value added thing for them to do, because they know the back end, there's going to be something that happens. So we're pretty excited about that, and excited to see how the community responds over time, because, you know, 1 year isn't going to change necessarily the way people behave, but maybe over the course of the next 4 years, as we move towards our 5-year program, we can be successful.
Finally, we're going to close up talking about the biggest thing in my mind, what we do. It's not enough to just work on the problems. If we can't change from vacant spaces to vibrant places, we can't succeed. And the land bank is where we're doing that. A change in how we staff things, a change in our ability to get title insurance, our new approval process that really streamlines how we get houses in and houses out, and the results. Having a full access to someone who can manage the properties for us. We have Chuck down there out in the street checking, monitoring the boarding, inspecting houses, making things happen. Our ability to get title insurance has been a bottleneck for us. We don't believe we're at the perfect solution yet, but we know we can go through Clear Title and Title Bridge and get you title insurance. Not the perfect solution. We will keep pushing because it should be cheaper, but we will push that. Then there's our rehab program. 35 contractors, as Chris just signaled us from the back of the house. 70 houses gone into the program. 18 of those are recommended for demo. We're going to take one more bite of those and do open houses on those demo houses, because for people who don't have to pay contract rates, our demo criteria is based on either the incredibly unsafe status of the structure or the fact that you couldn't rehab it at contract rates. But if you can do the work at less than contract rates because you're a contractor, you might fit into our Demos to Diamonds program. We have 3 houses completed. We will continue to send you all those invitations to the open houses when they occur. I strongly encourage you to find the time to get out and see the work that is being done in these houses. You would not believe, I told you before, the first one at 2028 South 15th, I had been in the house, and when it came to the open house, I drove right past it because I did not recognize it. We have 5 houses started. We have 18 houses waiting to be awarded. That number is actually a couple of weeks old. It may be a little better by now. These are our flagship properties. These are what we've done. This is the first one, we put the tarp on that roof and treated it like inventory. I keep coming back to this one. This is where you let us treat it like inventory instead of the albatross around our neck. And they raise the value of their neighborhood. They save that block. This one people look at, and while these are slightly different angles from the same side of the house, this is the same end of the house. That's an enclosed porch. They took that off. They put on the new deck. And that house is sitting out there. It's a beautiful house. Each of these houses has gone for or taken a mortgage out for the asking price. 3609 Delavan. They put $46,000 into it. They asked $100,000 for it. It was on the market for 6 hours before they got an offer for the full asking price. Look at the house on the left. It doesn't even look like the house on the right. They put in a new driveway. They put in an extra bathroom. This house is the nicest house on its block now. A lady across the street asked if they would like to buy her house so they could turn it around too. This is how we drag the value back up, block by block, house by house.
Tip, over here. Would you go back to that next slide before that one? So I just wanted to point out that one of the unintended consequences that we discovered, the house that's been rehabbed, because we were working on that house, the neighbors next door cleaned up their property without any encouragement from us. They saw that we were making repairs, and they got out and did some things to clean up their piece of their property.
I would never disagree with you, Gordon, but that is not an unintended consequence. We fully believe if we bring these back up, it creates upward pressure, the same way that vacant house created downward pressure, except going the other way.
And oddly, when we were at one of our NRSA meetings in the Park Drive neighborhood, we actually had a woman who a house had sold through the land bank to someone not in the rehab program, but actually had flipped it. I don't know if it was land bank. She made it sound like it was land bank. It was one of those vacants that had been a problem property. And she said she feels like she can have neighbors over again, and that she also feels that she should do something to her house. And she goes, but I'm kind of old, so I don't know if I'm going to do anything, but boy, it seems like I should. I feel like my house looks dirty now. So I thought that was really amazing, and what Gordon's saying, I think it is that kind of contagion. You want to feel better because everything around you is starting to look better. So,
Mr. Markley.
I think nobody wants to be the worst house in the block. And when we were allowing these houses to sit there, they thought, well, my house isn't the worst. There's that one down the street still. But when we improve this one, they're thinking, wait a minute, maybe my house is the worst now. And so I do think there's that pressure. There are very few people out there who are okay with standing in their front yard and going, my house is the worst looking one on this street. So it definitely creates that pressure, and we want to keep doing that.
We have made no apology for the fact that we call ourselves out on the fact that we have been permissive and set the example. We had houses go through the tax sale, and when it didn't sell, nothing happened. So why should I pay my taxes if nothing's going to happen? It just goes through the tax sale, I get a little extra mail, so what? But by showing that things are happening, people are actually responding.
That's right. That's great. All right. Anything else?
Is there one more?
No, we're down to the questions now.
All right. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Just responding to something you said, Tib, you said block by block. Do we have a geographic strategy where we're trying to focus our attention, or is it clearly just a shotgun approach through the whole?
It is that map question again that Judd is working very hard to overcome. At the moment, the elusive Will-O-Wisp is a map that combines all of the information we need to see so we can do that accurate targeting, so we can pick out. I mean, our first priority is to pick off that low-hanging fruit, the 2026 South 15th Street, only house on its block that was in that shape. Where we can find those are a quick, easy choice. But part of the SOAR process is doing that assessment neighborhood by neighborhood. and making those decisions how to prioritize the dollars, because there simply are not enough dollars. No matter how much we would like to pour endless money in, there simply isn't enough to do everything. So the
And I wanna
SOAR
just
project is about targeting that for the biggest impact.
I want to make clear that on land bank, the money we're spending is on boarding, but then, so we're not spending money to rehab these. I want to make clear, because that was kind of confusing sounding to me, and that meant that the public might think, no, this is private contractors doing this work on these houses, not the unified government. I do want to make also a note that the strategic code enforcement is really looking at corridors in some of our neighborhoods that we identified as having indicators of struggle. And that is where we're trying to work on our corridors, because if you feel good coming into your community, you're more likely to clean up your house, just like if we pick one up on your street and clean it up. And then, of course, looking at those neighborhoods that there's no one shining star that's trying to pull the rest of them up. So trying to help create shining stars in those areas as well. Okay.
All right, well done.
We'll see you back here with our 2018 SOAR goals and a year-end wrap-up after the first of the year.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes our meeting tonight, the 5 o'clock meeting, and we'll be downstairs. Getting ahead of myself. We'll be downstairs and reconvene in the commission chambers at 7 p.m. Thank you.